Hey, 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 it's Technology Tuesday. That's right, folks. You know what time it is. It's Technology Tuesday at 2. Greg, go ahead and launch that video, brother. All right, all right.
Hey,
Technology
all
Tuesday,
right.
back in the building. Jerry Franklin Poe and Greg Russell. And
Hey,
this week we're going to do something a little different. We're going to bring you into a debate or a discussion that Greg and I have been having over terminology that we're using in our business, terminology that we use for our sales copy, terminology we use for our marketing copy, terminology we use to describe ourselves in the marketplace, in the environment of presenting online as a content creator online, creating your evergreen assets. Are you calling yourself a digital presenter, or an online presenter, a virtual presenter? The reason why we even got introduced to this discussion is a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I came across an article that stated, and let me just get the headline. It said, it's time to stop calling online interactions virtual. And when I first heard that, I was like, what? Well, let me read that again. Because at first I was like, yo, that doesn't sound right. Because I know I've been using the term virtual. This is a virtual event, virtual presenter. You know, there's even groups on Facebook that I had joined called virtual presenters. So reading the headline that said it's time to stop calling online interactions virtual, that hit me, and I was like, I need to read this article, and I posted it. Some of you may have seen it in the group, because I posted it in the group for Technology Tuesday. So if you didn't see it, then that probably means you're not in the group, which that would imply you need to go and join the group.
join the group.
technologytuesday.com. So Greg, when you saw this headline, because I sent it to you, what was your impression?
Well, first of all, I thought it was a great article. I think there's a lot of terms that we use today that don't accurately describe what we're actually doing or trying to describe. And I've heard a long time ago that if you change your language, you can change your life. So I think that it's time that we spend a little bit of time focusing on these terms that we're using and make sure we're using the right terms so we can express the right feelings and emotions and explanations that we're trying to express using the words correctly.
Yeah, I know that phrase too. I mean, I've heard that, like, the words you use that determine the reality that you live in, like
Right.
the language that you speak. Even in the ancient Hebrew text that some people would refer to as the Bible.
Good book, huh?
It says that the power in life and death is in the tongue. The power in life and death is in the tongue.
That's
So
right.
the thought is, what impressions are you creating when we use these terms? So reading the article stated that by using the term virtual, you are discounting what you do, because virtual implies it's not real. So I want everyone to catch that. The term virtual implies that it's not real. It's not something that is real. It's not based on reality that we can touch. It's fake. It's an imagination. And I think the odd thing is, when you look up these terms in the dictionary, because a lot of these terms are newer terms, online, digital, virtual, these were not terms that we had in our language for years. I mean, if you go back 20, 30, well, I guess not 20 years, because 20 years, I'm starting to date myself. It's probably about 40 years ago now, like 40 years. So there was no such thing as being digital, right? Everything was analog, and there wasn't online really didn't exist. Virtual, we didn't use it in this context. So now words that we have in our language, we're now using them in a different context than what the word was actually introduced to begin with. So
what do you think? What do you think? How would the term virtual been used, like, before we started using it on the internet? Like, what would a sentence you could use where we would use the word virtual so we can give a really good example?
So when I look at the Webster, or what is it called, Merriam-Webster dictionary, because like it's not just Webster anymore. So their terms is like, I guess when you first started doing things, they gave an example of virtual shopping, virtual tour, as the first definition they have for virtual is being such in essence or effect through, though not formally recognized or admitted. So I don't know what that means, but being simulated on the computer or a computer network. So that would be, so it looks like the word virtual wasn't really being used, because none of the definitions, even with dictionary.com, it looks like virtual wasn't even started to be used until we got to computer. We had literal, like, there was like literally or literal, but virtual doesn't seem like it was being used before we got to technology. So, and you think about, I thought about this, Greg, like Hamilton just launched on Disney Plus, right?
Right.
And Hamilton was a live show on Broadway. So I'm thinking like all of a sudden everybody's saying, I'm doing everything virtual. I'm now doing virtual presentations. I'm now doing a virtual presenter. I'm doing everything virtual. And when I think about that, I think, well, Hamilton was a live event, in-person event that people used to go to, just like I was 3 or 4 months ago. I was doing live events in conference rooms, in meeting rooms, and I was speaking in front of people, 8 times a week. Not so much now in person, more so online. So I'm thinking like, oh, Hamilton was a live event, and just, I guess, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, those who are watching live, you can correct me if I don't know the exact date, but I know Hamilton's been a big thing because it's on Disney Plus. So when they put Hamilton on Disney Plus, they didn't say, hey, this is a virtual Broadway production. Like Disney didn't say like, hey, I got a virtual show for you. I got a virtual event for you. They're like, no, Hamilton is now a movie that we're now streaming online. They didn't say Hamilton is now a virtual production. They didn't say anything about that.
That makes sense, because like you said, the term didn't come about from like when it started using technology. Because I remember, the first, my earliest recollection is when it was referred to as RAM, and they said we're going to use virtual RAM, meaning you don't really have the memory there, but we're going to use it from other resources on your computer. So they called it virtual RAM. Like instead of you having 8 megabytes, you have 8 megabytes of physical RAM that the little disk that you put in your computer gave you 8 megabytes, but you could get up to 12 megabytes because they're going to use 4 megabytes of virtual RAM. So it wasn't the real RAM. It was like using something else in place of. And that's kind of like my first recognition of using the term virtual.
Which implied virtual wasn't real.
Right.
So even from
now, I think even more than ever, when you have to. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Like I was going to say, like, so from the beginning, so you're saying the first time you heard it, because I see that on dictionary.com, virtual disk in RAM, virtual memory on a hard disk. So it's like temporary, simulated, extended by computer software. So it's something that, so the creation of the word implied something that didn't exist.
Right.
And now we're using that word to describe ourselves as presenters, or we're using that word to describe the products and services that we are creating and offering people. So now I'm doing a virtual event. So are you saying your event isn't real and doesn't exist? I'm a virtual speaker. So you're saying that you're not really a speaker, that you don't exist. So when I read the article, I was like, wow, this is something to think about, because in terms of compensation for the value that you give to the marketplace, the article was saying that by calling your stuff virtual, or saying that something is virtual, it now decreases the value of that thing because it implies it doesn't really exist.
Right.
Versus all we're doing is we've now taken stuff that's what if we think about it and break it down, we're now taking things that were in person and put them online. So it's really a conversation of, is it in person or is it in line? Not whether is it real or is it virtual, which means fake.
Right. It's funny because I think of what we use now, the term as virtual reality, right?
Right.
And people play
VR.
these virtual reality games. And so virtual meaning, temporary and not real, but then you throw behind it the word reality. And so I understand what a virtual reality game is. It's a game where you're playing in a virtual world, where you experience, life, life where you have a character that, a character for yourself, and you go around and do stuff, right? So, but in reality, in real life, that's not who you are, right? So it's like virtual reality. So I think you're onto a good point. Like, should we really be using the term virtual for our events? Because is it not a real thing, or is it just something that happens on the computer? And I think there's other words and other terminologies that can better explain what we're talking about when we say a virtual event or a virtual conference.
Yeah. So for those who are watching live with us, drop some comments. What are your thoughts on this terminology? So we think about these words: virtual, digital, online. Now, what I'm looking at it, and what I decided to do is I'm no longer describing what I do as virtual. In my language, I'm going to be using online. This is an online presentation. This is an online event versus in person. So I can either present to you two different ways, in person or online. What do you prefer? Because it's the same information. I haven't decreased the value of it. I'm just changing the mechanism that I deliver it. I deliver it to you either on the telephone, because we don't say it's a virtual conversation when we're on the phone. We don't call somebody up like, hey, man, can we have a virtual talk? I can talk to you in person, or I could talk to you virtually through the phone, right? Because the phone, if we think about it, I was coming up with these examples. So we're talking about technology that replaces something else. So the virtual event, which we have on these platforms, the platforms like Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, Teams, all this stuff, right? So you think about other technology. So we used to have a telegraph. The telegraph was replaced by the telephone, but it was still a real conversation, right? Email wasn't a virtual letter, right? We used to write letters, then we started writing emails, but no one ever said, hey, I'm going to send you a virtual letter, right?
Right.
Roland Martin is a really good example. I was thinking about that this morning. Roland Martin, for those who may not know, is a journalist who was on many platforms. He used to run a newspaper in Chicago called the Chicago Defender. He was a reporter on CNN. Then he went to TV One, and now he has a online news show, and he calls it the digital show. He doesn't call it the virtual show. He calls it the daily digital show because his show is streamed on platforms online. So I'm wondering that, this virtual thing, people have just like held on to it, and they've been running with it because everybody's now coming out with this virtual everything. I'm teaching you a course on how to master virtual presentations. We're going to be, excellent virtual presenters. And I'm not one to just run with things just because everybody else is doing it. I'm used to being an outsider and not following the trends. I want to do stuff based on what I believe, what I think works best. So what are you thinking about? Those who are watching, what do you think about this term in terms of what word do you think works best? Virtual, online, or digital? I think online works best for me because it just the mechanism that is being delivered. Before, I would be giving you a presentation in person, but now I'm just doing a presentation online. It's still the same presentation. It's just changing the delivery mechanism.
Right.
So if you're coaching somebody and you're face-to-face coaching them, and now you're coaching them through a camera through Zoom, is it a virtual coaching session? I don't think you would consider it virtual. And I know that I have a problem with this because this morning I had to reschedule a doctor's appointment with my cardiologist. And they were like, well, we could do one this afternoon because we're not having people come into the office. We're doing virtual appointments. So my first question was, well, do you take virtual copays?
Can I pay you virtually?
So we're doing virtual appointments that I can send you virtual money as the copay for my virtual appointment, right? And ain't nobody that I know try and take virtual cash, right? No one's like, yo, I got some virtual money for you. So unless you want virtual money to go along with your virtual event, we might want to change the language, because even with Bitcoin, I don't think they call it virtual money.
They do not. Yeah, they do not. Yeah, man, I agree. I think that, you know, as in terms of how you present and name your things, I think that you may want to be careful about using the term virtual based on what it really means. So for me, I like online and digital over virtual. But the marketer in me also knows that people are going to use that term. People are going to search that term. So as far as what I call my stuff or what I may name my stuff is one thing, but as far as, you know, knowing what people are going to search for, that's something, you know, you want to use what people are going to be looking for. So I know that it's probably not going to change. I understand that, you know, it may not be the right term, but it's probably going to be, it's too far. Too many people have been using it for too long now for it to change, even though it doesn't accurately describe what they're trying to do.
Right. And I agree. I think it's see, the challenge is, well, is Jerry Franklin Poe's opinion today going to change the whole momentum of the word being used? And I know I don't have that much power that by my opinion is going to sway everybody, like, Jerry said we should no longer use it. We should stop using the term. So it's almost like, what do you use to describe your stuff, but also understanding what people are looking for. So
it's interesting because I can throw another one out there, like the term online marketer. I don't like the term, right? Because the online part is just a medium, right? If you're going to market or you're a marketer, then, you know, you can market on the radio, or you can market on TV, or you can market in print, right? By newspaper or even direct mail. But those people in television don't go around saying, I'm a television marketer. The people in radio don't go around saying, I'm a radio marketer, right? But online, for some reason, people think is different. It's not different. It's just a medium. And so they want to call themselves an online marketer. And it's like, well, can you only do it online? Don't the same principles apply to marketing that apply online, apply offline? And if you really think about it and you know the history, you know, 90% of what we do online comes from the things that happened in offline, right? Everything. So even the term like below the fold, which means, you know, before they have to scroll in the online world, but the term above the fold is the actual term. Above the fold basically went back to newspaper times when they were talking about the folding of the newspaper. So, you know, the term online marketer is not a real thing for me either, but I know people are going to use it for forever and ever.
So I'm looking at some of the comments from, like, we got April in here, Billy, Justin commenting, Stephanie's in here, and April has talked about, you know, perception means so much, and that, you know, how you price stuff, like people perceive something based on the quality, based on the price. Billy was talking about, after looking at the definition of virtual, that online trainer, online presenter, online coach might be a better example. So, however, the key term search, virtual Zoomer, right? Virtual Zoom. People are using these terms, and I think it's one of those things where it's like buzz. Like, that's the buzz right now. The buzz is virtual. So, because that's what's hot. I don't know how long it's going to be hot, because I don't remember before this year virtual being that hot. I mean, I know what the situation that our world is in, with everybody not being able to be together. So we have the social distancing that's made virtual stuff. That's the key now. Everything has to go virtual. But if it was virtual, because when you talk about the VR, right, what reminded me of a movie, and for those who don't know, I watch a lot of movies, and this is my thing. And I watch movies because I get a lot of lessons from movies. I observe a lot of human behavior and lessons from movies. And it was a movie called Ready Player One, and it was about virtual reality. It was basically, that in the future, people would spend more time in the virtual world than the real world because it was an escape from how bad their life was. So their life was so terrible that they would spend most of their day plugged into a system, because in that system, they could be whoever they wanted to be. They could build whatever life they wanted in there, because their regular life was just not what they wanted. So because they weren't living the life they could enjoy in their reality, they would start plugging into this virtual reality, and they would build up cash. Everything that they would do, they would build all up in there. So it's like, is that the image that we want to create? Or do we want to create something with our stuff that it doesn't have the same level of quality because it's virtual? So when you're thinking about how you position your stuff, when I read the article, my thought was that I could create a differentiation by not using virtual and using online. That okay, this stuff is a real event, live, online, the same thing you'll be getting in person, but it's just now it's going to be on the internet, versus if it's virtual, that it implied it wasn't as real as what it was before. Like, so I decided that, for me, I'm going to be using stuff like Your Online Stage. And I have that domain name, youronlinestage.com. So I'm going to be an online presenter as well as an in-person presenter. So I'm going to be working on online presenting skills and visual presentations that work online, because I don't think there's anything virtual about what I do, because everything that I'm doing involves a real chair. My chair is not virtual. My camera is not virtual. The mic's not virtual. It's all real. I don't have to plug into something else in order to perceive it. I'm all perceiving it in the same world that I live in. And I think the buzz terms, like, we know that there are certain things that people are going to search for. There are certain things that people are going to be looking for when they look at the Google, right? They're Googling stuff. So we know that we still have to tag our stuff. So we still might have to tag the word virtual in there, because that's what people are going to be searching for. You still might have to build that, key term into your stuff on the back end, because that's what people will be looking for. But when it comes to the actual language that you use to describe your stuff, you might want to be thinking about what language it's you're using. So let me read some of the more of these comments. Check in. What are some of your thoughts, Greg?
Man, I think that you're right. I think that most people will continue to use the word incorrectly, but I think that being different and naming your stuff actually correctly will help you in the long run. But I also think that you got to be smart about what people will be searching for at the same time. So, and if you're smart and you understand how to use some of those ads and keyword terms, you can have people find you who are searching for those things and not have your stuff named with that term as well. So, I think it's just a balance. I think you have to balance it out with what's really going to work well for your business. If it's something that is a major keyword for your business, then regardless whether it's right or wrong, whether it really means the thing that it means or not, you may have to use it. And I know several entrepreneurs who are in that have that exact thing. It's like the name of what they're using and stuff is not what it actually is, and it drives them crazy. But they wouldn't not use it or call it something else, because it would dramatically change their bottom line, and they're not willing to do that. So I think you just have to be smart about it. And I think as far as the term virtually, I agree with you, Jerry. I think that it's a term that when it means, ultimately not real or not actually there, that's not something, that we want to name our products and services after. And I say that having products named with virtual in it.
In the article, was coming from a different world than the one that I live in. It was coming from education, right? So as a speaker and author in the business world, I saw the implications in my world. The person who wrote the article was saying that now that we're doing in the education world, they're doing more e-learning. They were doing more e-courses. So does that discount the content and the quality of the education by using the word virtual, because it's still the same information? If a person took the class, because I know Harvard and a lot of these schools are facing this right now because they are not reducing the tuition for the students who are going to school, even though their school is going to be completely online and not in person. They still want the same tuition, right? They still want the same level of payment, even though they're not given the experience of being there on campus. So, if, you know, so do you get like a virtual? My Harvard degree is a virtual degree, versus, and if it is a virtual degree, do I get a discount? Because kids are like, because the students are complaining, like, do I get a discount on my education because now you're not giving me the same thing that I was getting before? So if you don't want people to feel that they're not getting the same thing, then what's going to require from us is a couple things. So one, it's going to require we use the right language. But number two, it's going to require that how you deliver online is the same way you deliver in person. So you have to be able to maintain the quality of your production, maintain the quality of your presentation, maintain the quality of your content in whatever mechanism that you're in. Because if you don't, then in essence, it will be considered less than and devalued and quote unquote a virtual experience.
Yeah, I think you're about to open up a can of worms, man, when you're talking about that's a whole nother show right there, whether you should pay the exact same amount for a online event versus a in-person physical event. And, you know, you got people who view that on both sides, saying, look, we're still providing you with the content. We're still inviting you with the quote unquote education. So, you know, just because there's not a physical place for you to show up, you know, doesn't mean that we want to charge less for it. And other people are like, hey, we know that, you know, if you don't have a physical building, then your costs come down because you don't either have to rent it or pay to have it cleaned or decorated or whatever. And so that should reflect their cost of what they're paying to, you know, attend. So I think that's a very serious conversation that we can have at another time. But I think that having the option is definitely there, but that's a different discussion to talk about. You know, whether.
So I wasn't saying you should charge. I don't think you should reduce I don't think you should reduce the investment. I was looking at what the students I was listening to and reading their comments. They were saying that the quality of the delivery was suffering through the online experience. So it's almost so they're implying that because the professors weren't apt at this new mechanism of delivery, right? So what I'm saying is if so they're like, hey man, you know, this professor, like online, it's like, I know he was boring before, but now it's even worse. I gotta watch him on a computer, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is Greg, what I'm saying is if you are expecting to still receive the same level of compensation, that means your online experience has to be equivalent to the in-person experience.
Right.
Which means your online stage has to be the same level of production, your delivery. So if you are having difficulty engaging online, if you're having difficulty with your production, then yeah, you might be giving a virtual experience compared to your in-person experience. So if you're expecting the same level of compensation online from an online experience, then you'd want to make sure that it matches your in-person experience, which is why, you know, we've been talking about doing a workshop on that in a couple of weeks, or I should say a training or a live event online about building your stage. I remember we were talking about that, and we decided Was it, what did we, August? What did we say? August 1st?
August 1st, Saturday.
Right, so
at 10
Saturday,
a.m.
August 1st. So Saturday, August 1st to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think we're going to go from like 10 to 12, but it might go past 12. It depends on how much bonus information we give out, how many questions we get. But looking at how do you set up your online stage? How do you develop a dynamic home-built studio? So when you look at Greg's studio and the background, or my studio in the background, the lighting, the microphones, I know when it was time for me to switch. So back in March, I remember it was a Monday. I was live in front of people, and by noon, they had made a new announcement that they couldn't have more than 10 people in a room. So the event got canceled. And by Thursday, I had to now transfer from a live event to an online event. And I had to figure out really fast. I spent tons of time, hours searching online, looking for the right implementation, the right tools, the right lighting, how to set the lighting up. Look, I'm just a regular dude. I'm a regular dude from Avondale, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up. So I didn't know anything about this. You know, I grew up in the country. The town I grew up in only had 2 stoplights. That's right, 2 stoplights. So
wow.
Trying to figure out how to set up a home studio was something totally out. Like what camera, what microphone, all that type of stuff. And normally I depended upon other people. Like for most of my speaking career, they were meeting planners. They were event planners. They were people who took care of that. And I would, ask them questions to say like, hey, where do I stand? What time is mic check? Can I get a bar stool? Can I get a table for the presenter? But it wasn't like I took the time to set up all those tools. So this actually really is 2 weeks, not this weekend, but next weekend, August 1st, join us, register. This is going to be a thing that we're going to do. We're going to record it. And I think as a bonus, Greg, do you think we should give everybody who comes on as a bonus? Maybe they get the recording as well. What do you think about that? I don't know if that's something we want to do, or
since this is mostly a large part of it's going to be your content. It's however you want to do it, man. If you want to give a bonus, we just just make sure we write it down so that we know we're going to.
Yeah, let me think about it. So like for those of you who register, because this is not something we're going to be doing as like a freebie. This is $47. If you go to register at youronlinestage.com, and for those who do register, this week I will give you a bonus where you get the recording of the event for free as a bonus for registering this week. Next week, if that will not be the case, this week, so by, what's today? Today's the 21st. So by end of this week, which would be, let me look at the calendar because I don't know what date it is anymore, the 25th. So if you register the 25th of July, which is this weekend, then you will get a bonus. You'll get the recording of all the content for free. So after that, what's going to be happening is this will be part of my online courses. So the only way you'd be able to get the recording after that is you have to join the membership site in order to get that. So this is a fast action bonus for those who want to take advantage. April, I'm reading her question.
Yeah, I went ahead and posted the link to the registration page for that event in the comments, so you guys can see it there. And I know Jerry is checking out the comments, so we can give you some live feedback right now.
That's a great question. April's question is, do you think we're going to be, like when we get back to the future, I think she's referring to when we get back to in-person events, will they be smaller? And I don't know, April. Like my opinion is, I think it's going to take a while for people to get comfortable being in crowds again, even with social distancing. Yeah, I can see smaller events being possible, but I don't know if the event is not local. Like, you'd have to travel there, right? So even if it was 20 or 30 people, how are we going to get there? So there's a lot of complicated. I think it's going to be take a while for events to get back to the way they were before. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be anywhere as knowledgeable as the medical staff that is running the virus pandemic panel. Like I'm not Dr. Fauci. I don't even claim to be. So I do think it's going to be a while before we get back to events the way they were before. So I do think that the online events are going to be around for a while. And I also believe that people are going to want a combination of both, that people are going to want to have the option to do something through an online experience, because not everybody's going to want to travel as much as they were before. I know personally, my frequent flyer status, even though they're going to let me maintain it until next year, I'm not in any hurry to build it back up again. Like I'm not like jumping to get back on a plane anytime soon. That's just my personal opinion. Everybody has to do what they think is best for themselves. But yeah, April, I don't know. I think that, yeah, it might be possible for people to do smaller events and have the people be social distanced. I think that would be possible, but I don't know how many folks are going to be wanting to travel to get there. So then the market for those events may be just people who are more in the local area, versus if you have two components, you have a few people there physically and a whole bunch of people more that could watch. So now you cover both ends of the spectrum. You can have the in-person experience for those who are local and the online experience for those who may not want to travel. But I do think it's going to be a while for things to get back to where everyone is comfortable gathering in larger groups where we're closer together and we're not as social distance as we were before.
Yeah. April says she thinks that smart entrepreneurs should start positioning for hybrid events, meaning a live anniversary. And I think that a lot of technology companies are working towards making that easier. And, as someone who puts on virtual events for clients, that's something that, we figured out, how to do. But I think in the future, it's going to become easier for people to have a physical event and also an online event at the same time, where it's definitely a hybrid. I think April's right. I think that's going to be a bigger, we're going to be seeing more of that in the very near future.
Yeah, I think that is going to be, what I think, Greg, is that people are going to start looking more into broadcast. How do you create? So if you think about this from a industry perspective, we've been experiencing online events for years. We just called it television.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like when you're watching.
So you're talking like pay-per-view.
No, but you still have to pay. Like there's not, my TV is not free, man. Like, yo, Comcast is in my pocket every month, bro. Like that.
Yeah, well, if you think about the events like events.
Yeah,
like
but pay-per-view is true. Pay-per-view would probably be the best analysis for it. The best, if you want to compare it to apples to apples, probably pay-per-view would be the best thing, where you have an event that you pay to go to live, like people could be ringside at a boxing match or get the pay-per-view and watch it from their home. But what I was looking at it from is a production perspective, that for years TV would be theater that's not in a theater. It's theater that you go to in your house. So this show is recorded in front of a live studio audience. So you have people there, but it's also being broadcast online. So I think before we would have people who were videoing events to capture video content, not necessarily the live stream, but to turn that into something else later on.
Yep.
And I think now it's going to be looked at as, how do you have a more of a production quality? Like you have to have a producer. You would have to have a producer for your event, the same way we have a producer for our show. Shout out to Cindy. Greg's daughter is producing our show, as she's our producer. Come on, Cindy. Yeah. She's behind the scenes, right? We're raising them up. Young in the business. So I think that's going to be the move, right? You're going to now have to have a producer. I mean, I shouldn't say the word have to. I think that might be the future, is that live events will have meeting planners and meeting producers to produce the online part of the event, just like somebody is producing the live part of the event.
Yep. I agree, man. And yeah, thanks for the shout out. Sydney is excited to be working with us, and it gives me a relief to not have to stare at the, and actually produce it, where I can just focus on having the conversation, and now even being able to look at the comments where I wasn't able to do that before. So thank you guys for, leaving those comments. Make sure you continue to do so. Even if you're catching this on a replay, we'd love to hear your thoughts, and we will definitely respond. So thanks, Sydney, for being our producer for our show, and we look forward to doing more shows with you. And with that, Jerry, we need to tell them all about this event right quick before we shut it down for this Tuesday.
Yes, I know we've been gone. This has been probably a little bit. This discussion has gone longer than some of our other discussions. But again, folks, for those of you who are serious about building your online stage, I took a lot of time to try to figure out how to get the right production. I mean, if you would see, I think what I'm going to do, Greg, is I might take a picture and post it somewhere, just show what this really looks like without all the lights turned on. I mean, this room is just like a regular room in my house, but when I turn the lights on and have everything set up, it just changes the whole dynamic. And for those of you who want to learn how to do that, how to create in your home, and without having to break the bank, without having to go and do all the research yourself, watch all the videos on how to build lighting setups and find out what lights work for you, and without having to go get some type of loan from the bank to spend thousands of dollars to get the right equipment, come join us. Go to youronlinestage.com, and we will definitely be willing to help you. Again, this event is only $47, and if those who take action this week by July 25th, then you will get a bonus. You will get the recording of the content for free as part of your registration this week. And I want to shout out everybody who's been tuning in. Justin, April, thank you so much for your comments. And yes, I do remember the first time I walked into the grocery store and saw myself on the camera, because I know as a kid, I would stand in front of the camera and I'll be waving to myself on the screen. So yeah, all we've done is extended the model out to a much larger scale. So folks, we're going to be here with you again. Greg and myself will be here again with you next week at 2:00, Technology Tuesday at 2. So make sure you're part of the group, because we have these discussions continued within the group on a weekly throughout the week. So we're here on Tuesdays, but we're talking within the group throughout the whole entire week. Join us at technologytuesday.com. Find out more about the trainings and live seminars we're doing on the weekends as well. And we'll see you all next time.
Guys, you take care. I can't wait to talk to you soon.